big, beautiful wall.
So what's the theory here? Well, the Trade Expansion Act allows the president to impose whatever tariffs they like if national security is at stake. Say because your enemies may control the steel or aluminium you need to produce your weapons. And that's a great reason for tariffs, if it isn't garbage. Because the Defense Department themselves say US military requirements for steel and aluminium each only represent about 3% of American production. And Defense does not believe it will impact its ability to meet national defense requirements. In other words, nah. So let's forget the national security fig leaf, hey? What about
China?
China! He's got a point. China does dump an awful lot of super cheap products, and we're talking 51% of global steel and 54% of global aluminium. But China barely exports any of that steel or any of the aluminium to America. It's actually Canada who supplies heaps of America's steel and even more of America's aluminium. So Canada is the one who could be hurt by these tariffs. Okay, so could the tariffs at least save the American aluminium industry? Look, just look at it. The imports here, they're increasing all the time. Now, imports are 90% of the American aluminium market. Well, since the 90s, America has gone from 23 aluminium smelters to 5, and in the last 5 years has shed more than half its aluminium jobs. Century Aluminium alone have promised 300 more jobs if these tariffs go through, so shouldn't that help stem the bleeding? Yes! Except 97% of the jobs associated with aluminium are not in aluminium production, but in the downstream industries. They're the ones that use aluminium to make other stuff. And for all those industries, their cost just went up. The case for steel tariffs is even worse. American steel production has been pretty much solid for 30 years. By the way, that is 70% of the steel market. Only 30% of American steel is imported. Jobs did drop a lot in the 80s, but for the last 15 years, they've held steady as well. So you've got, on one hand, a $36 billion steel industry that employs 140,000 workers and is pretty much doing fine. And on the other hand, you have the industries that use steel that are worth a combined $1 trillion and employ 6.5 million people. That's like 50 times the number of jobs. And their steel costs are about to go up by 25%. Which leads to companies like Licciardello putting their $250 million investment in Tennessee on hold because of steel costs. This is going to hurt investment, it will hurt manufacturers and builders, and it will hurt consumers. But we shouldn't play it up too much. After all, aluminium and steel imports combined only account for 2% of imports and about 0.2% of GDP, so these tariffs, they really can't do too much damage, as long as no one's silly enough, of course, to exacerbate the situation by carrying on like, trade wars are good and easy to win, what are you doing?